All right, the time is approximately 6 p.m., and the June 19th, 2025 Farragut Municipal Planning Commission will now begin. Good evening to those of you in attendance and online. Thank all of you for attending tonight's Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meeting. My name is Ron Pinchuk. I am the chairman that will be conducting tonight's Planning Commission meeting. We appreciate that each of you has taken the time from your schedules to either attend or view tonight's meeting to observe how our town government works. All Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meetings are public notice per Tennessee State Law, TCA 8-44-103. All Planning Commission meetings are streaming on the Farragut YouTube channel, and links to the recordings may be found on the Town of Farragut website. Those in attendance should be able to pick up a copy of the agenda at the door when you came in tonight. If you are not able to attend in person and are viewing from home, you will be able to see the agenda posted on the Town of Farragut's website. For any persons in attendance who would like to address this commission concerning an item on tonight's agenda, please pick up a blue card at the door and write your name, address, and agenda number that you wish to comment on, and give it to Mark Shipley down here to my left. There will also be time reserved at the end of the business meeting for residents' comments on agenda items on non-agenda subjects, which also requires that you fill out a blue comment card and include your name, address, and topic of your comments as well. On each agenda item, the chairman will ask the town staff for Farragut residents' input. During this time, any Farragut resident wishing to speak to the Planning Commission on that specific agenda item may do so for up to 5 minutes. After being recognized by the chairman, please proceed to the podium microphone in order to be heard and viewed by all. To conduct efficient business-like meetings, the town has adopted rules for how its meetings will be conducted. Primarily, these rules are designed to keep the meeting progressing along, ensure that all points of view are heard and considered, and to provide common courtesy to everyone. We ask that you observe the established meeting rules when addressing members of the town staff and/or members of the Planning Commission. At the beginning of your presentation, please state your name and address for the record. We ask that you address your questions to the chairman. If necessary, the chairman will call on a commissioner or staff member to address your questions or comments. Once you have given your input, please return to your seat. We ask that persons speaking avoid the use of improper language and profanity. Please only address the agenda issues. Speakers should strive to present original viewpoints and avoid redundancy. And we ask that you also stay on topic of that specific agenda item. Everyone, please remember, we are here tonight doing the people's business. It is a very important responsibility for all of us. Now I ask that if you are able, please stand for a moment of silence for prayer and reflection, to be followed by a recital of the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mark, are there any announcements or recognitions?
No, sir.
Okay. Next is approval of the agenda. I've established that we do have a quorum of 5 members. And let me see.
Motion to approve.
Okay. With the
there is one item, a postponement of action item 3C, which is the Comcast fiber cable installation action item.
So can you amend that, please, Mayor?
Motion to approve the amended agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? No. Okay, there are no no's. Motion passes unanimously. Next, approval of the minutes. Are there any amendments to the minutes?
No, sir.
I need a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion and a second to approval of the minutes. All in favor say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed? No. We have no no's. Unanimously passed. Tonight we have 4 action items on our agenda and 1 discussion item. first action item will be 3A, appointment of youth representative to the Planning Commission for fiscal year 2026. Mark?
Yes, during the past fiscal year, Anna Presley has served the Planning Commission as our youth representative, and she has done an outstanding job, has been at almost every meeting. I think she's only missed one, as I remember. So we very much appreciate her service to the Planning Commission, and wish her well at Western Carolina, where she'll be starting in the fall. And so we do have two candidates that have indicated that the Planning Commission is their first choice. And one of those candidates is a junior at Farragut High School. The other is a senior. The only thing to keep in mind, this is completely a Planning Commission decision. I would say that the senior candidate did have the VRB as his second choice, and there were no other candidates that had the VRB as either a first or a second choice. So the VRB would not really have a representative if this senior is not and doesn't end up being their nominee. So that would put the junior that recommended that wanted the Planning Commission as their first choice as possibly the one to choose in this between these two. They both are really outstanding candidates. I don't know if you looked at their background and their letters of recommendation. I feel kind of inadequate, frankly, when I when I looked through those, because it was pretty impressive. So I think either one would be a great representative. So it's really your all's decision, but I would point that out.
Question mark about that. In this situation, if the VRB does not have any candidates, there are two for this, does staff go back to the candidates and say, you were not selected, of course, because we had somebody else, but VRB would like to put you on this council, this committee, and just as a recommendation, as a suggestion to them to give them another chance to join, to get involved?
Yeah, I'm not really over that, so I'm not really sure how exactly that works. Normally, we don't have this issue come up with the VRB, and honestly, we usually have 3 or 4 candidates for the Planning Commission. So that was kind of surprising that we didn't have anyone that picked the VRB as their first choice, and this senior was the only one that even had it as a second choice.
Mark, when does the VRB meet?
They're
on
usually
Tuesdays.
there you go. They meet the 4th Tuesday of every month, typically.
Next month, or next week.
Yeah, that would be their last meeting of this fiscal year. This person would start, obviously, in the first meeting in July, which would be the 4th Tuesday.
There's nobody signed up for the VRB right now. There's no.
No first choice. The senior that signed up.
He's the second choice, but I'm
As
saying
he-
there's no first choice.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
That makes it pretty simple then. I would suggest that we go with the senior and his second choice,
The junior.
or the junior for us, and then let the VRB have that senior.
Yeah, I would
Well,
agree with
he said
that.
second
It was
choice.
my opinion that he had the strongest resume, I guess I'll call it resume, references in there. And if we select that one, as you said, that solves both issues at once. So I would move to appoint Albert Liu as our Planning Commission representative.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, the tree board is a required board through our Tree City USA program. We have a public tree care ordinance, and it provides for the tree board and their duties. And one of the representatives on the tree board is required to be either a member of the Planning Commission or the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Scott Russ was appointed as the Planning Commission's representative for the tree board, but of course, with him departing, then the Planning Commission would need to consider a replacement for Scott Russ, and that's what this agenda item is regarding. Again, this is your all's decision. I don't have a preference one way or the other.
All right. Anybody want to volunteer, first of all? You can't get any lower in that chair, John. Commissioner Wright, are you interested?
No.
Okay.
We have members that aren't here.
Yeah. I know Louise has
Commissioner
been.
Devlin, wait a minute, I haven't heard from Commissioner Devlin.
My suggestion is postpone this till we have a full committee.
Okay, well, we can do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
I have just explain for the uninformed, maybe people watching, like brief, like what does the tree board do and what does the representative do?
The tree board, they typically will meet quarterly, so they don't meet that often. Some of the things that they do are provide input on trees that we're thinking about planting on public properties. They also look at streetscape plans that we require for new developments and provide input on those things. And they help with the Arbor Day celebration, and just provide staff with, input on different tree-related considerations, training sessions on proper pruning or proper mulching and things like that. Frankly, most of the tree board is town staff that deal with public property maintenance, like public works, engineering, planning, parks and recreation, because that's where most of our public trees, which the tree board is kind of overseeing, are located. So that's generally the major things that the tree board is involved with.
Now, you say that Scott Russ is dropped off, and is Bud McKelvey still on it, or is he dropped off?
No, Will replaced him as the
well.
Public Works representative, Will Wiley.
We've got quite a few trees to be planted this fall, coming up, or late fall, because we've got at least 5 or 6 of them just over at the community center because of all the ones that died from the
Yep.
cold snap.
Yeah, the Arbor Day trees over there that we had to take out. So I think we need a motion. I know Mayor made a motion to that. We probably need a second on the postponement.
Second to postpone.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions on this subject? If not, we'll time to vote. All in favor of the motion, yes?
Yes.
Opposed, no? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Moving on. Action item 3C has been postponed, so we're going to move on to 3D. And let's see. Discussion and public hearing on approval of a new traffic signal at the northern intersection of Concord Road, State Route 332, and Loop Road. Town of Farragut applicant.
I'm sorry, a minute ago, I thought that was coming up awfully fast, but
We postponed one.
we are proposing a traffic signal at the northern intersection of Loop Road and Concord Road. It's a very simple layout. It's a two-lane approach on Loop Road, very much like Municipal Center Drive at Campbell Station. Serves two good purposes. One, will help people on Loop Road to be able to make a left turn a lot easier on Concord Road. But another benefit is the fact that it will create gaps in northbound traffic during peak hours. I know there has long been an issue with people in Concord Hills, Farragut Hills Boulevard, trying to get out during the mornings and there's so much traffic going by that they can't pull out.
Same thing with Thornton Heights.
Same thing at Thornton Heights, correct. So, staff recommends approval as presented.
I'm assuming there are no citizens willing to talk?
No, sir. No
Okay.
citizen.
Do we have any other representatives needing to talk other than the town?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. So I get the upward flow, the northern flow was there any way to kind of look at, is it far enough away we feel really confident it's not going to affect the roundabout?
It's far enough away, it
Yeah.
shouldn't affect the roundabout.
Okay.
Got a lot in between.
Yeah,
That's correct.
thanks.
Okay, we need a motion.
So moved.
Second? Second. All right, any further comments or questions by the commissioners?
Done.
All right, time to vote. All in favor of the motion, say yes. Yes?
Yes.
Opposed, no? I hear no nos. It's unanimous. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item. Next action item is 3E, discussion and public hearing on approval of a preliminary plat for improvements to Outlet Drive to include a turn lane for the property at 11471 Outlet Drive and for improvements at the Snyder Road, North Campbell Station Road intersection. Association with the venture at Laster Farms Development in Knox County at 11471 Outlet Drive. Cannon & Can Incorporated is the applicant.
Yes, sir.
Mark
This
first.
is a preliminary plat for improvements to two sections of public streets in the town of Farragut that were recommended through a traffic impact study associated with a new residential development that actually is in Knox County. It's just to the east of the Tapestry Apartments off of Outlet Drive. It's going to be called the Venture at Laster Farms. It has 240 multifamily units and 80 townhomes on roughly 18 acres. So the development's only access, this is kind of the existing conditions on the screen. There's a couple of houses there currently. There's kind of a depression along Outlet Drive, and that's one of really the reason they didn't put the access further east, which would have been ideal because it would have been further away from the Tapestry and the Tommy's accesses. But in this particular location, one thing that the traffic impact study recommended was a deceleration, like a taper and stack lane. And that is a 75-foot taper with a 140-foot storage lane to help facilitate kind of the westbound traffic flow on Outlet Drive so that people kind of get out of the flow of traffic as they're going west. So that was one area. The second area was along North Campbell Station Road for northbound, and that was to incorporate a right turn lane at the intersection of North Campbell Station and Snyder Road. And that would have a 140-foot taper with a 100-foot storage area. And again, that would facilitate the flow of northbound traffic so that people can kind of get out of the flow, the regular flow of traffic. Another thing that was recommended in the traffic impact study was to replace the 3-section signal head with a 5-section right turn signal head at this intersection. One thing that's noted also in the traffic impact study is at the conclusion of the entire project, the traffic signal timing at both ends of Outlet Drive, both at the Snyder Road, North Campbell Station signal in the town, and then the one at Lovell Road and Outlet Drive in Knox County will both have to be readjusted to account for the project's impact. One of the things that we recommended some time ago when this was first brought to the town's attention was a letter of credit to be provided so that we would have an assurance that the improvements recommended in the traffic impact study would be satisfactorily completed on those town streets that are impacted. And another thing that we recommended to the county and was incorporated in the rezoning for this development was that no more than 100 certificates of occupancy would be issued in this development until all the improvements involving the town's portion were satisfactorily completed, other than, of course, the signal timing that would be at the conclusion of the overall project. So the staff has reviewed these plans. We recommend approval, subject to a note being added regarding the 100 certificates of occupancy, just so that it's also in these plans and very clear what the threshold is. That there is a discrepancy in the plans of roughly 20 feet between the length of the taper that's recommended in the traffic impact study at the North Campbell Station, Snyder Road, and then what's shown on the plans. I think it's 140 recommended and it's 120 on the plans. Either that needs to be clarified, there may be a reason for that, or just modified so that the two are consistent. And then the third thing was just providing the letter of credit for the satisfactory completion of the improvements to the town's rights-of-ways and the streets within our rights-of-ways impacted by this project. And that dollar amount would be established by the town engineer. So with those subject tos, again, the staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat.
I need a motion
Motion to approve
with the three subject tos.
with the three subject twos. Thank you.
Second motion.
Did we have a second down here?
Second.
You did, okay. Do we have a motion and a second? Do we have any citizens listed?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll let the representative speak. It's up to you.
Yeah, I'm Jason Hunt, Cannon to Cannon.
Get a little closer to the mic if you could, or pull it towards you, whatever's easier. Oh, maybe you can't pull. We'll make sure people at home can hear you as well.
Jason Hunt, Cannon to Cannon, 10025 Investment Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee. Just kind of speaking to that taper, and we can go to the plans, but we're limited based on the existing, I believe that's a gas station entrance. So we were maximizing the taper up to that point, so we didn't modify theirs. Because I think the original plan was to remove that concrete island, but given the angle between those two roadways, we were keeping that channelized island. So the original traffic impact study was basing that off of what was available there. So that's why we're about 20 feet short on the taper.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Well, okay, but so you're adding the 20 or you're taking the 20 away? What are we doing here?
There would be 120 in the plans. I think you just need to clarify on the plans that
Okay.
the reason for the discrepancy between the plans and what's shown on the traffic impact study.
We can do that.
Yeah.
End result.
Yes.
Who's this gentleman here?
Hi, good evening. My name is Mirza Samoon. I'm with the developer and general contractor, Millstone Ventures LLC. I'm here alongside Jason from Cannon and Cannon, just in case there was any questions that I needed to address from the ownership side.
Yes, there is. Matter of fact, my motion was to accept with the three subject twos. Now, that's something that you have to agree to.
Yeah, we do agree to that, and looking forward to collaborating with you all on the letter of credit and the other two subjects as well. And something that we added or changed to our plans after our pre-developer meeting, that was early June, was to mill and overlay this as well. So looking forward to adding that to that's already on the plans, but looking forward to improving that part of this intersection as well for the town.
There will be no issue with the 100?
Correct. Yeah, no issue with that. Timing-wise, we're expecting this to be a 24-month project in terms of the multifamily development. So we hope to complete the road improvements somewhere between 10 to 12 months after we start the site work, which we're hoping is going to be around October or so to start the project. So no issues.
Okay, that's all I've got.
I have a question. I'm concerned about the amount of traffic that goes underneath the interstate on Campbell Station Road northbound. And when you're gonna add this extra lane, how is that gonna affect that traffic, and how long is it gonna take to build that extra lane?
Yeah, so the extra lane is there to improve the intersection. It actually brings it back to existing conditions. So I think it takes it back to a level of service C. So by adding the additional storage of taper, it'll actually put this back to current conditions, with the improvement, with the background growth that'll happen over the next couple of years as well.
Okay,
And how long? How long is this gonna take?
yeah.
The actual improvements once they
Of the
begin.
road, I'm talking about that extra lane on North Campbell Station to Snyder.
Yeah, that's something that we're still, in terms of our project timeline, we're still firming that up as we're working through the final subcontractors and bids for the project, but the actual timing and the amount of time it's gonna take is still up in the air a little bit, but as we kind of get closer towards that, we're gonna be collaborating, of course, with engineering and the folks here in the town and make sure that it doesn't disrupt traffic flow, especially the mill and overlay. That's something that would be occurring at night, but happy to follow up if needed on the actual timeline of adding the lane in there, or the expanded turn lane.
It was a real problem for quite some time, and with our new timing lights, we've been able to reduce the amount of, I guess, backup on North Campbell Station. It was going all the way up to, how far back was it going at times? To,
It was backing up to, well, yeah.
yeah, it was going pretty far. My point is, we've made it better. I just want to make sure we're not regressing here for a period of 6, 8 months, or is it going to be 2 or 3 months?
No, yeah, it'll be significantly less than that. We're
Okay.
expecting this to be like maybe a couple weeks max.
Terrific.
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Well,
you.
Yeah, we're very, very familiar with doing these types of improvements in some other municipalities, and typically they don't take a whole lot of time. This is not too intrusive. It's mostly asphalt work, and of course, the mill and overlay, just timing that with doing that at night so we're not disrupting peak traffic, as you know, would be a headache for everybody, but yeah, it's not going to be several months, by any means.
Well, being at night, you'll probably still have to have traffic management out there.
Sorry, what was that, sir?
You'll probably still have to have traffic management. Darrell usually has that requirement.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that, but I'm sure we're going to be collaborating closely here with Daryl and the team on what's going to be required there, especially with the letter of credit. We're going to be having to talk about that here soon as well, but happy to comply with that.
Okay, thank you.
Darrell, can I ask you a question here? Sure. During the staff developer meeting, we had quite a bit of discussion on the paving and where it was going to be paved and where it was not going to be paved. Is that all resolved between the town and the?
Yes, sir. I believe it's shown on the plans here. I know the northern end is at a pavement joint. I believe the southern end is as well. So you're okay with their intent on the boundaries of that pavement? Yes. Correct. Should be fine, yes.
All
Thank you.
that shaded area on the left is what they're milling, so they can tie in what they're doing better with the existing asphalt. So they're gonna have to mill that down about 1.5 inches and then come back and resurface all that and tie it in.
So it's not just that one lane, it's all of that's going to be milled. Wow.
Yeah, all that.
This is more extensive than I thought. Whoa, okay.
That's the reason I said you'll probably need traffic management people out there to directing traffic, so that we don't have an issue with the people that's doing the work.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we agree with that, and especially the mill and overlay. That's like you said, that area. That's all the lanes there across that. So that's something like that. It's going to have to be timed in the evening during night hours, so we're not disrupting the flow there. And like I said, happy to have traffic management involved there.
Okay, traffic management's important.
Any other comments, questions by commissioners? All right, we've got a motion and a second. If there's no other comments or questions, it's time to vote. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? No. Hear no no's. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, last item on our next item on our agenda is a discussion item. Discussion on updates to the driveways and other access ways ordinance concerning how accesses are approved and opportunities to streamline the approval process where possible. Town of Farragut applicant.
Yes, this, again, is discussion only. And just to give you some background, this ordinance was originally written in 1997, and a lot of it has not been modified, and it's outdated. So I really just kind of went through the whole ordinance and realized that a lot of the sections really needed to be cleaned up. And it was kind of started out as a smaller project than it ended up, but we have made some amendments to this ordinance in recent years. Most recently, we amended the traffic impact study section to take into consideration impacts to pedestrians and bicyclists. And we've already seen the benefits of that with a couple of the projects, like the school project on Boring Road, where they specifically took those things into consideration that, we now require. So that's been helpful. I don't expect you to read these images that are on the screen, but it's just taken from the kind of draft language. So there's a number of sections that we're proposing to replace. And the first one is in the policy section, really just kind of creating a new section that lays out very clearly the purpose, intent, and scope of this particular ordinance. That's also consistent with kind of what we did with the sign ordinance when we overhauled it a few years ago, just to make it real clear why do we have this ordinance, and to lay it out there. It's kind of a little buried in the current policy chapter of this ordinance. It's not really very clear. So again, that's one of the objectives here with that. And then also to kind of tie the intent and the purpose to our plan, because the plan's what guides all of our regulations. Connectivity is a key component, a key strategy of our plan, so that's referenced in our purpose. Addressing our remaining vacant parcels and how they get developed, and trying to take into consideration how access can impact all users of the transportation system. So those are things that are in this draft intent section. We're also taking out some other sections, or proposing to, that are just frankly outdated, or they include information that either we don't do or is not something we usually want to see happen. Like there's some reference in the current language for acceleration lanes. We don't really want to be promoting acceleration lanes. We do deceleration lanes, but we don't really promote acceleration lanes because we have a little bit of a concern about the safety factor with those. So some of those sections, that have that dated information, I think we're cleaning that up, and we're trying to have a lot of that, the information that we want to retain, to be covered in other new sections where the information is kind of laid out and easier to find. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. A couple of new sections that we did add that are consistent with what we did to the sign ordinance was a section, basically, it deals with when you have a discrepancy within your code that the stricter applies. And that's something that is not in this ordinance right now, but it really needs to be. And then also severability is something that's important in all new ordinances. And that is if a court rules some aspect of this ordinance in violation of the law, then it doesn't render the whole ordinance void. So it's just that portion. And we applied these two sections to the sign ordinance when we updated it, and those are important sections to have from a legal perspective. The most important, the most significant amendments that we made was really just going through the current permit required and permit approved sections of our ordinance and just thinking about how does our approval process actually work with the electronic system? You know, how does it move through the different approvals? And then to try to take into account the different types of streets, the classification of streets, and the context that an access may be associated with as it relates to the permit approval process and then what you need to submit for a permit as far as the information. So this was also kind of an opportunity to look at maybe ways of streamlining the approval process as it relates to access. There have been, we've actually had 17 variances to this ordinance in the last 5 years. And anytime I see where there's a lot of variances that people are requesting, it kind of is a red flag to me that something needs to be adjusted in your requirements. And so that's kind of an objective of this as well, is to try to look at, are there areas where we could streamline the approval process? Because a lot of these variances right now for non-local streets have to go not only through the Planning Commission, but also the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And some of them are really no-brainers, you know, like the Boring Road subdivision where the conflicting access was to a single-family house lot. You know, that's something that, from a staff's perspective, either could be approved by the town engineer or the Planning Commission as part of the plat approval process and not need to go further to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. I've got some other images of some, that's the Boring Road one that came before y'all just a few months ago. But there's other examples, like on some collector streets on Heron Road, there was an access for a new house there, and they were just wanting to move it to the south slightly to kind of center it in the property, and actually it had better sight distance than where the older access was. But because it was within 200 feet of another access on that road, it had to go through both the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So it was kind of a long process. Turkey Creek Road, this is another example of one. This was an access for a guy basically to take his golf cart down to his dock on the lake there off of Turkey Creek Road. But that actually had to go through both the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And then another good example is on South Hobbs Road, where there was a lot that was platted recently, and because the access had to go onto a street that was classified as a local collector, then that access had to be approved through both the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So, you know, there's some language in the draft provisions that basically give the Planning Commission the authority to grant variances on when it's related to a site plan or a subdivision plat, and not have to go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen if it's involving a collector street. Now, these arterial streets like Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road, you know, I haven't proposed to change those any. I think if you're getting a variance there, it might be useful to have both the Planning Commission and the board's input, because, you know, those are much heavier volume streets and faster speeds, so the access needs to be maybe looked at more closely for those type of classifications. So those were the two big sections, was just how do we deal with the access approval process? What do we typically require now in practice with when somebody submits for an access request? And then also adding a section dealing with driveways for single-family dwellings to establish kind of a maximum width, and the fact that the access has to be paved or concrete within the right-of-way portion at least. And that's usually not a problem in the town, but we don't want a situation where somebody just has a gravel driveway all the way out to the street, because what happens is either mud or rock wash down into the road. And it can, and especially if you're on a road bike or something like that, I know from experience, it can be it can create some problems. So just kind of cleaning that up and establishing what we expect with residential driveways in practice and putting that in the ordinance so that it's there very clearly outlined. So that's kind of an overview of what we're trying to accomplish here. There's a lot of information in this. And if you have any specific questions, or if you want me to go through each of the proposed sections and talk through those a little bit more, I'd be happy to do that. But what I really tried to do with the access approval process sections in particular was to kind of break it into sections based on the classification of the street and who typically is the approval entity for those. Because, if it's a single-family house lot, then we review those driveways as part of the building permit process, and they don't go through any other boards. Some things the town engineer can approve without taking it to the board. And then Planning Commission, obviously, you all have a role in approval. And sometimes Board of Mayor and Alderman also must approve different things. And usually that's going to be variances to access onto, arterial streets in general. So,
Example being the one on North Campbell Station.
yeah, North Campbell Station would be a good example. Kingston Pike, Watt Road, those would all be major arterial roads that we would probably want to have the board to weigh in on those too, just because they're the elected officials representing the community and just to get that additional input. So, does anybody have any questions or comments or anything you want me to go over in more detail?
I have a couple of comments. In general, I think based on what you've said and what I read here is that your changes accomplish what you're trying to do, okay? They clarify the scope, et cetera, clarify the approval process and add elements that were not adequately covered. You have to forgive me, but sometimes I get down in the weeds in this, so I'm gonna make a comment for your consideration. In the section access approval process, Section C, Planning Commission approval.
Yeah.
And the second paragraph. In that paragraph, you seem to combine elements of the approval process with elements of the specification section 22-150. In other words, you start talking about requirements of deceleration lane and requirements for cross-access to abutting properties. You may want to look and see if you really want to leave that in there. Is it necessary? In fact, I'm not sure that whole paragraph is necessary, but you want to take another look at that. So my comment is, take a look at that, make sure you've got all that information in there is what you feel you need in there. But it looked to me like there was information in there that really didn't belong in there, but you may have your own reasons. That's the only comment I had. Thank you.
I think that's a good comment. I kind of struggle with that one, and I may just create a separate section to dealing with that altogether, because it's kind of not cleanly in the approval or the plan submittal section. So it might be we need a section on that just deals with connectivity and deceleration lanes and, that kind of thing, and just have that laid out as a separate section. Yeah, I think that's a good comment.
I agree with that because that's always been a discussion point with developers and people that's involved with it.
Yep, no, I appreciate that. I think that's a good change. I'll work that into the new language. Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
As always, Mark, I think it's a good job. A lot to go over. I know there's a lot of it was antiquated, but we've moved away from some of the stuff that was in there, so.
All right, I appreciate it. I will try to get this on for an ordinance next month. If not, it'll be August, because we do have quite a bit on next month's agenda. So,
Okay, next item, approval of utilities. Anything?
no, sir.
I got a comment on utilities. And it's not really us, it's LCUB. They're making a mess. We thought the contractor that was there before that we went through with the previous, fiber optic, this bunch here, has no, consideration of what they're being told to do, because, I mean, they dig a hole, oh, that's the wrong spot. They dig another hole, that's another wrong spot. And, I mean, it's.
Is it specific in your subdivision
Yeah,
right
it is.
now?
Yeah, that's where they're at right now.
Okay.
And I think this may be the first subdivision in town that they've actually went into. So, they've got, oil that's leaked out of this truck all over the streets. They've got a truck that has died, that's sitting there in the road with a cone in front of it. It's in a blind spot too, so, it's, I think they need a little bit of help,
Okay.
management-wise.
We'll deal with that. Yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I was not aware of that.
And that they're coming to my neighborhood soon, it'd be great if you could get the traffic for us.
We will definitely bring this to their attention.
Just drive through Sugarwood, you'll see what I'm talking about real quick, okay?
Okay.
All right, nothing else on utilities? What about citizens forum? Apparently nobody else is here.
No one. Yep.
All right, that having been said, the time is approximately 6:47. If I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second. Motion, everybody need a vote, yes.